Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you for another episode of Thriving Together. We have a great guest on our podcast today, and we talk about lots of things that I feel like I have not talked about on this show before. I even talk a little bit about my dating experiences, and we do talk about plant medicine and some tender topics around family dynamics. So just be in a good nurturing space when you're going to listen to this episode. But I do think it's very supportive, and I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So before I tell you about our guest, I do want to just let you know about a couple of things going on in my world and just give you some updates. It's always so important whenever I get to spend some time with you. So I just launched, well, I guess by the time you listen to it would have been like maybe a few weeks, months prior. I launched a amazing program that I have never done before. Honestly, I feel like I've done a lot of aspects of this work before, and it's something people come to me for, and they have for my entire 14-year career. But I've never allowed people to work with me in this very specific way, one on one. So I don't know if I've even mentioned this to you all before, if I have in past episodes, but I have an amazing program called Own Your Magnetism. As a former talk show host, as somebody who built multiple companies now at this point, in order to get the results that I'm really looking for, in order to manifest and create and put the direct actions that I need to in place so that I can have the career that I actually want versus feeling like I'm taking a passive step and the career is just sort of happening to me and I'm just sort of taking whatever comes to me. I created the Own Your Magnetism program where you can work with me one on one. And it is becoming one of my favorite things to do. I absolutely love my clients. I love them so much. We're having so much fun getting to know each other and also showing them really unique, specific, and detailed ways, very tangible, actionable ways that they can take all the work that they're already doing, all the hard work that they're working on, all the steps that they've been taking to work on their career to move forward, and make really specific tweaks to get them results. Because I think that's what happens with a lot of people. And what I'm seeing with the clients that I've been working with is that they're kind of, on this hamster wheel and sort of doing the thing. Like they're like, okay, someone said I should do this, so I'm going to go do that. Someone said I should do this, so I'm going to go do that. And you're just kind of doing that over and over and over again versus having a very defined strategy and way that you work with people, and ways that you put your work out there. And it's something I love to do. As I said, people have been coming to me for this kind of advice and support my entire 14-year career, but I've never given a formal way for people to work with me in this way. So I hope you check it out. We will link to the Own Your Magnetism program down below. And you can also be sure to, when you go to that page, to book a complimentary discovery call with me so we can chat. You can see, what's possible, if we vibe, and if you think I can really support you. I'm all about getting people results. So I only want to work with people who are ready to take their careers to the next level and actually get the things that they really want out of the work that they're doing. So that is a little bit of an update or just reminder if you've heard me talk about that recently. And then I want to go to our episode this week. So on today's episode, we have the amazing Kelly Campbell. I'm going to read you a little bit of Kelly's bio. So Kelly is a trauma-informed leadership coach to emerging and established leaders who know they are meant for more. And Kelly instigates change and impact with her work. Her debut book, Heal to Lead, Revolutionizing Leadership Through Trauma Healing, will be released on April 16th, 2024. So it just came out recently. You can get it wherever books are sold. Kelly is an inspiring keynote speaker. They have also written for Forbes and currently write for Entrepreneur and for their Substack community titled The New TLC, Trauma, Leadership, and Consciousness. A longtime conservationist, conservationist. I almost thought that said conversationist, but that could be true too. A longtime conservationist, Kelly was trained by Al Gore as a climate reality leader in 2017. Most recently, they became certified as a Reiki Level 3 practitioner. Kelly's vision is to empower more than half of humanity to heal its childhood trauma so that we may reimagine and rebuild the world together. I am so excited to share this episode with you. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And as I said, we talk about some things that I have not shared before. And I definitely have been really working on bringing more of my own story to each episode since we're really just doing interviews these days. We haven't been doing so many solo episodes. So I hope you enjoy, my sharing of my story as well. And Kelly is just an incredible guest, and I had so much fun talking to her. So hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here with my friend, Kelly Campbell. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Nitika. How are you?
I'm good. Ooh, you did the TH. Wow. That is impressive. I love it. I love the sound of that. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you for being on my show. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. It's been a great day, and the day has just gotten better because we're going to be in conversation.
Oh, yes. I'm so excited. And we met not that long ago. For those of you who are tuning in, we met at our mutual friend, Dr. Akila Kadei's book launch, which was so wonderful. And yeah, we basically just like hit it off and started chatting and realized there were so many mutual connections and friends and peers and all of that kind of stuff. And so I'd love for people to just learn about you today and also learn how the work that you do can support them in thriving in their lives. And yeah, I know you have a book called Heal to Lead, which if you're watching on YouTube, you can see in the background so beautifully. I'm like, no one will ever forget your book title because it is perfectly placed. Thumbs up for that. I love it. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do. I know you're a trauma-informed coach and you work with folks on leadership. And what had you start that journey?
So, yeah, my work in the world is very much about trauma integration and leadership style, leadership efficacy. And these are not conversations that we are used to having. I grew up in a pretty tumultuous environment. My mother has comorbidity conditions, mental health challenges. I didn't know that when I was younger. I just knew something felt off. And I always was trying to constantly vie for her love and affection. And literally, it felt like nothing that I could do. Straight A's, captain of every team, great at everything I did. It felt like I couldn't do enough to actually really earn belonging and love and acceptance from her. And so not knowing that, right, not knowing exactly what was happening, I didn't think, oh, well, there's something wrong with my caregivers and my environment, because that's too scary. It had to be me. And so I think a lot of us turn all of that onto ourselves, and that's where a lot of these kind of formative things happen. And they really create the blueprint for who we become as adults, especially who we become as leaders, because nothing is more reflective than when we start leading other people and start projecting on others or being in relationship with others, projecting all of that pain. And so if it's not, something that is really in our awareness, and it's not something that we actively decide we want to take responsibility for, then we just keep that cycle going. And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to help people change that, because it wasn't really until I sold my company when I was 36 that I started to kind of get onto myself. It was like, wait a minute, the way that this is all going, like life, I'm not in for this. Like, I can't keep doing this for another 50, 60, 70 years. So yeah, it was really, it's just been such a journey of like self-discovery, and really I feel most fulfilled when I help other people kind of have these realizations for themselves just through that coaching process. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I think, so many things came up for me when you were sharing about your journey and with your caregiver and your mom and the way that that impacted you. I think something I've been learning in my own life is, and I've seen it actually in like dating recently, which I don't talk about really ever, but I'm going to talk
I
about
know that about you.
I'm going to talk about a little tiny, tiny bit. But I have noticed like I am a more anxious attached person, for those of you who understand attachment theory, even on a basic level. And I definitely attract a lot of people who are more avoidant and, don't like to communicate as much as I do and all those kinds of things. And I just have noticed that it like ends up how I end up translating it is like their inability to communicate or their like lack of desire to communicate, whatever it ends up being, I then turn it on myself and say like, "Oh my God, you must have just like not been good enough, or you must have
Mhm.
just, maybe if you had said this like a little differently, or maybe you've done something a little differently, And I think the blessing in that for me has been that I am now at a place like with my nervous system and my nervous system work where I can see I'm not like taking action from that place anymore. Does that make sense? So it's like I'm still feeling the feelings, and that's really challenging, but I'm not then, trying to contort and trying to like grasp and trying to do all these things, which like my 20 or even like 30-year-old self would have done. But what are some of those things for you? Like when you were saying that you were looking at your life and you're like, oh, this is not cool. Like this is not the vibe. This is not what we want. Like what were some of those aspects that you were like, oh, I don't want this anymore?
Yeah, I mean, similar to you, I had a very anxious attachment style, again, going back to childhood. And it's like, love me, love me, love me. And I don't, in some cases, I was also attracting partners who were more avoidant
Mhm.
all the way up until my current partner. So I was constantly being triggered. But other parts of my life, I was just sort of self-sabotaging. That was one big one. It was like good things would happen. I wouldn't believe, and this is all unconscious or subconscious, by the way. I wouldn't believe that I was deserving of that. So
Yeah.
I would find a way to like mess it up, right? It was like, why do we do these things, right? Really, all of this is like that underpinning of unrepressed or repressed and unprocessed, unintegrated childhood trauma.
Mhm.
And so it was some self-sabotage, just some really like maladaptive behaviors. I did notice also that I was like leaning toward a lot of distraction, whether that was through alcohol,
Mhm.
um, edibles, even nothing hardcore, but like, even
Yeah.
distraction, retail therapy or like workaholism, all of the addictions. Um, all of those things, it was like, okay, so I'm just going to get up and keep doing this every single day. That doesn't feel like me. That doesn't feel sustainable. And it definitely doesn't feel like what I want to continue to do. And because I actually knew that that wasn't me, there was a part of my soul, like on a deep level, that was like, this is not you. This is a mask. This is a layer. This is someone else told you that you had to do these things.
Mhm.
And so I was really curious. I got really curious finally in my like mid 30s to say, well, what would it look like if I stopped doing these things? If I modified that behavior, if I really took responsibility and started diving into these realms that I've really not touched before, even though I had been in therapy for like almost 2 decades by that point, on and off. So like therapy is great. I kind of think about it like as a gateway drug. But it's not the thing that's going to help with trauma integration because we keep talking about and ruminating about the same things over and over again. And I think about therapy as like it's from here backwards. Coaching and trauma integration is from here forwards.
Mhm.
That's not a knock on therapy. It's just like it got me to here
Yeah.
and I needed something different to bring me forward. So,
I really love that. I
yeah.
love that so much, actually, the way that you just described it. Because I was also in therapy for like on and off for 12 years before I started my nervous system work
Mm.
that I'm just so passionate about. And yeah, I've not quite said it that way, but I agree. I really needed therapy. Like
Yeah.
my therapist, Aleda, I call her lady. Like she's like my second mom in a lot of ways, with healthy boundaries, obviously. But like in my heart, she is like my second mom. Because she really showed me how to grieve my illness.
Uh,
And that was something I had no idea I was even allowed to do.
mm,
I spent the first 3 years of therapy with her just like crying on her floor, basically, because I had been so hurt and upset about my health and my divorce because I saw her shortly after I'd gotten divorced. And so that I needed that. Like I don't think I would have even been able to hear what you're saying is like the forward moving part, like the second, chapter. I don't think I would have even been able to hear it if I hadn't experienced all of that deeper inner work with her. But I think that's so interesting. So what does it look like for you? Like, so for me, it's been nervous system work and some EMDR. That's been really helpful. But
Mhm.
what do you feel is like the path forward for you or for the people that you work with?
Oh my goodness. So it's different for everyone, as you
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
super nonlinear. For me, it was after therapy, it was a combination of like spiritual work, Buddhist psychology, shadow work, really effective, lots of somatics, lots of different types of body work and somatic emotional release, very similar to nervous system work that you're talking
Mhm.
about. In 2022, I did ayahuasca for the first time, which I had never done a psychedelic before that. And for like a recovering type A who loves to control everything because that makes me feel quote unquote safe, an illusion. Um, Going into the middle of the Peruvian Amazon and doing, some plant medicine that was going to take me, I don't know, could have been 6, 8, 10 hours long in a place that I was unfamiliar with and people around people that I was unfamiliar with, you know, it was a big moment for me. I think at that, and I will never say that it was the moment because I don't think there is a thing as the moment. Had I not been doing all of that trauma integration work in all different modalities up until then, I think that sometimes plant medicine gets a bad rap because there are some people, mostly younger kids. I can't believe I'm even saying the word kids. Um, that think ayahuasca and plant medicines and things like that, psychedelics are kind of like a magic bullet. And they're not. They're
Yeah.
not. They're a very profound experience, but I specifically and intentionally waited until I was really, really ready.
Mhm.
And had I not been doing all of that nervous system reset work, I would have been real like nervous to the point where it would have been anxiety inducing. And it
Mhm.
wasn't. I had such a beautiful experience. It was painful and it was hard, but I got through it. It was very smooth in a way, right? I never felt scared. It's hard to describe, if you've never done it before, but the way that I describe it in the book, because I talk about a couple of vignettes from the ayahuasca journey,
Mhm.
if you read it or if you hear me talk about it, you're like, oh my God, you experienced your own death. Like that must have been so scary. But in the moment, I was really well resourced. I was like, okay, I see what's happening here. My body is decomposing, but my conscious awareness is online. And I actually know, even though I'm on this medicine, I actually know that I'm here. I can feel my body. I'm sitting here in this maloka and I'm okay. And that helped me to kind of move through. I always love talking about this journey because I think a lot of people are scared of plant
Yeah.
medicine.
Yeah.
And obviously it's only available if you are not on SSRIs and don't
Mhm.
have, previous mental health conditions. So it's not for everyone. But it really it changed a lot for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate you talking about it because I've definitely, the part that you said initially about folks maybe using it more of a crutch or thinking, okay, I'm just going to take this thing and then like I will get to skip the 20 years of therapy that we've done or whatever. I definitely felt that frustration around plant medicine initially because I was around a lot of people that were using it in that way. But I have since spoken to folks who are using it more in the way that you're saying, where it's like integrated into all this other stuff that they're already
Mhm.
doing. And it's, created some really powerful benefits for them. And they have a respect for like the place and the purpose
Yeah,
of the tool of that medicine. I don't think it would, I can't say never, but I couldn't imagine myself being open to it just because of all of my other medications and physical things that I have to deal
sure.
with. I feel like I would be too nervous
Mhm.
with things like that, but I think it's beautiful to be able to unpack it a little bit
Yeah.
and just like understand that, it can be very powerful, especially when you're using it with these other tools.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was really clear also that I wanted to do it in the place where the actual leaves are and the vine is derived from. That felt really important. And to do that work with the indigenous maestros in the Amazon, like the lineage was important to me. It felt like honoring and respecting that medicine and not doing it like, weekend retreat in the Catskills in New York. Like I'm not,
Yeah.
and no shade to anyone who does that. I try not to judge that, although I just did. But it just wasn't for me. That's all I'm trying to say. It wasn't for me. And I since have started, probably about 6 months after I got back, I started microdosing psilocybin. That's been a game changer for me as well. But I don't rely on those things to, because to me, that still feels like outsourcing my well-being and outsourcing my resourcefulness. And I don't want to do that. So I do look at them as tools. I love that you use that word.
So if you don't rely on these different forms of plant medicine, what would you say you do rely on?
Myself, my intuition, strengthening that relationship to self. I recently went to a trauma conference in Boston with Bessel van der Kolk, obviously Body Keeps the Score. And one of the practitioners who does a lot of psychedelic assisted therapy in New York City posed this, not even a question, but basically said what we're trying to do with some of the patients that we work with is try to get them to answer the question or understand, who am I when I am safe? And I've been like kicking that idea and that question around in my mind. And I had a whole Substack, meandering about it. But I don't know that that's actually the right question. I don't think it's who am I when I'm safe. I think it's who am I when I feel safer. And I say that as a distinction because safety is subjective, right? I don't use the term, I did in the book, unfortunately, but now already, even though it's only been 2 weeks since it's been out, I don't use the word safe spaces, or that I don't say I create a safe space, because I can't create your safety for you, right? I can create a supportive growth environment, but you decide whether that space is safe.
Yeah.
So safety and who am I when I'm safe feels like a destination. It feels like this solid ground that I'm trying to get at and trying to reach, when it just doesn't leave room for the exploration for me. So safer, actually, who am I when I feel safer feels a little bit more active and a little bit more like, oh, I could play with that, you know? And so I'm back in therapy after 11 years, found a therapist who's like checks all my boxes and works with generative somatics, EMDR, all the things. And I'm excited to start exploring this a little bit more, because there's a lot of the specific memories and specific instances of abuse from when I was younger, that those are lodged in my body and I have not really processed those. So I'm going to be doing that deep work next. So lots of nervous system stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And I'm glad you're back in therapy with somebody that you feel like excited about. I think that's so special. And yeah, I'm thinking about what you said about the safe spaces thing, because it reminds me actually of the Chronicon community in our app that we have. And I do consider it, my privilege, responsibility. It's really a joy and an honor for me to create that space in a way where we can support safety, where we can like lead with as much safety as possible. But I do agree. I don't think I would have said it the way that you've said it, but I think inherently if somebody comes in and they leave for some reason and they don't continue with their membership or whatever, I do have a sense of detachment from a lot of that most of the time. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, I really thought that person loved this or whatever. We have a very high retention rate, so we don't have a lot of people leave, to be honest. But when someone has, over the time, I have always assumed like they know what's best for them,
Mhm.
So like I've created the most loving, supportive, like empowering space I possibly could, but I can't dictate if somebody is going to be like, oh yeah, that's the way I want to be loved, or that's the way I want to be empowered, and all of those things in between. So I think that's really powerful. And I think that it is a like lesson in detachment in a lot of ways, is like the way
Mhm.
I'm sort of analyzing it from what you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels important that people, come back to the question that you're kind of asking. It all comes back to the self. It all comes back to that inner work, that trusting yourself, you know what's best for you. Um, and I think especially in communities where there's trauma or chronic illness, it can be easy to outsource that because you're relying on so many other practitioners and medical professionals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I want to get into a little bit about your book, since we have each other here. And I know you said your book just came out 2 weeks ago, which is so wild. But I'd love to just learn a little bit about why you decided to write the book Heal to Lead. Like what was it about your journey as facilitator and a leader, and also, as a human being, that made you feel like, oh, I have to write this particular book?
So I will be honest with you that I didn't write this particular book first. I wrote probably my third book first. And then I had a really brilliant consultant who said, it's fine. I like the draft that you did, but like put it away. We have to start from scratch. That's not your first book. And I really was like taken aback. It was like, what do you mean it's not my first book? Why do I have to, get rid of it? And really, she gave me this advice to say, as a first time author, we need to hear your voice. We need to hear your story. And we need to know who you are, where you come from, what your point of view is. And that all really made sense to me. And so again, instead of hiding under all of these masks and telling other people's stories, maybe mine as like a little drip into that, I was like, oh, okay, so this is actually an invitation for me to step forward. And once I got clear on that, it was almost like everything sort of fell into place, and not perfectly or smoothly, because that's not how the writing process or creative process works for books. But as I got clearer, it was like there's a conversation missing in the world. We talk about leadership. Everyone thinks that they know what leadership is or should be. We have these kind of terrible models in the corporate world, in the political world. We don't have to name names. We know exactly what we're talking about. And it was like, okay, so why do we just accept that that is what leadership, like the definition of leadership is what we see in the world? Really, when I look at those leaders, I call them in the book low conscious leaders, in contrast with high conscious leaders. The low conscious leaders are not bad people, but they are wounded people. They are not people who have gone and done the work to actively heal and integrate their childhood trauma. And what they're doing now is they're projecting their pain on all of us, and we have to deal with it. So because they didn't take responsibility for their own wounding, we have to. We have to endure it and take responsibility. And that felt really unfair. And I have a very strong value of justice. And so it was like, well, if no one else is going to start this conversation and tie these things together, then that feels like a really good use of my voice. And that's why I wrote the book. And so I talk about high conscious leadership as four fundamentals, like that there are four fundamentals to high conscious leadership. And really, high conscious leadership is sort of a building on conscious leadership that stemmed from conscious capitalism from about a decade ago with John Mackey, the former CEO of Whole Foods, and Raj Sisodia. And really, the difference is that conscious leadership, or actually today, any type of leadership, we know that there needs to be an element of self-awareness. But no one has said, well, how do you develop self-awareness? How do you increase self-awareness? because no one wanted to actually say the thing. And the thing was, you need to integrate your trauma in order to be on this like self-awareness journey, right? Like that's part of it. You have to encounter yourself and do a lot of self-discovery. So half of the book, the first fundamental of the four, is trauma integration. Most important. Then embodying vulnerability is number two. The third pillar is leading with compassion, not empathy, but compassion. I'll say why in a minute. And then the fourth one is lighting the way. So it's like, okay, you've done all this stuff. Now, are you going to do that and keep it for yourself? Or are you actually going to really lean into the indigenous wisdom of communal perpetuity and actually light the way for other people and our planet? The little asterisk about compassion is that the difference between empathy and compassion, right? Empathy is feeling with, compassion is feeling with and taking supportive action. Empathy is wonderful. It should be a hallmark of effective leadership, but compassion is about that, taking that action. So we can feel all day long, but if we're not supporting the people under our stewardship, why are we leaders?
Wow. I've never heard, I feel like I've tried to differentiate compassion and empathy before, but I don't know if I've done it in such a concise way. So I really appreciate that actually.
Well, it's not my work. It's Daniel Goleman.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So I'm leaning on and building on and
Mhm.
pulling from lots and lots of expertise and lots of
Totally.
research. And, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. And it also honors the work of those people.
Absolutely. Yeah, we all do that in our own way,
Yes.
I think, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, shout out to Daniel. That's a great way of saying that and just
Yeah.
summing that up. I think that was really helpful
Yeah.
to hear. And I also hear in the way that you laid out the different aspects of what you're teaching in Heal to Lead, that anyone could benefit from that. It's not necessarily like those stereotypical people that you might think, oh, they're a founder or they're, a public speaker or, whatever, that this person is leading an organization or a movement in some very clear way. I think
Mhm.
we all are leaders in our lives, and like whether that's being a part of a company and being on a team, or, a
That's right.
leader in your home, or, in your community, in your, local CSA, like whatever it might be for you. I think that's really, really valuable. I actually think there's a lot of just like life skills that happen when we develop our ability to be leaders. I know for me, oh my gosh, I came from such an insecure place when I first became a leader. And that's something I've had to work through time and time again of like, yes, you're a woman of color. Yes, you're a woman. Yes, we're told you should not be doing any of the things that you insist on doing all of the time. Yes, you have 3 chronic illnesses. Yes, you don't have a business degree. Like, yeah, all these things that I'm like, oh, I should have been this other way that I will just
Mm,
never be. I will just never be that other person. And much of my journey as an entrepreneur for the last 14 years has just been about like owning that every single day. Like I was talking to somebody today about, stuff that we're working on with Chronicon, and they were asking me about like very specific metrics. And this is actually a learning curve that I want to be better about, but
okay.
I'm such a heart-centered entrepreneur. I'm just like, y'all, I know it's out there. I know people need it. Like, let's just go. Like, let's just not, stop and think about things like so much. And at the same time, there's like skills that can be developed that I actually am excited to develop. But yeah, I used to have so much insecurity around that. I used to really like shy away from certain conversations or certain opportunities because I felt like I wasn't going to be good at that thing.
Mhm.
And healing that has definitely been a huge part in me getting to a different place in leadership.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
As you're talking, and you were listing all of these things about yourself, I was hearing a lot of like labels
Mhm.
based on social construct, right? And then ultimately where you're coming to now is back to that, like, I am unique. Whatever this composition is like, there's no other person like me. And I'm going to lean into that. And I'm going to trust that what I know in my body, in my mind, like what I'm bringing, like There's an inner wisdom there. And so I love that you're doing that. And may we all get to that place, you know?
Yeah, I think that's something that's actually been coming up for me a lot is like, and this is actually in my astrological chart, but
Go
that,
there, go there. Let's do it.
okay. So like apparently my chart is like very, I don't know if split is the right word, but there's two like very prominent themes. And like
Mhm.
one is that I have this very deep connection to God. Like it is in my actual chart and it has been palpable since like as long as I can remember. And then there's also this very deep doubt that I can have, And so it's like literally my astrologer who changed my life, shout out to Michael. He was like, that is the only thing in this chart that can take you out is your doubt. Literally, there's nothing else in this chart.
So
Not
it's you.
yeah, so it's me.
You.
It's me. And he's like, literally, not even all of the freaking illnesses, all like the divorce, like everything that you think on paper would be like the demise. No, it's just your mind
Yeah.
and your doubt.
Yeah.
And so I say all that to just say that like that is what I'm cultivating right now is trying to figure out like how do I continue to remind myself in every moment that the version of me that started Chronicon, that the version of me that decided to bet on this population of people when I was like, I don't know if anyone's going to care about this, and that continues to be challenged in this fight and this journey, in this, like this, yeah, this journey that I'm on with the company. Yeah, how am I going to keep deepening into that? And
Yeah.
so I love that you're teaching people this, Kelly. I think it's so important. Yeah.
Yeah. Something that you just mentioned is sort of feels like a microcosm of what everyone really grapples with, right? Which is like you call it self-doubt or you're in your astrological chart, there's like this self-doubt, right? But really what that is you came into the world feeling not good enough. Every single one of us has a version of not good enough, not blank enough, not pretty enough, not thin enough, not the on and on and on, fill in the blank, right? At the end of the day, though, it's just we don't feel like we're enough. We don't even need the blank. And so I think a lot of the work, people talk about the work, the work is getting back to understanding that you really are enough. You're everything that you need. You are perfect. This is what we do in coaching. You are perfect as you are. That's not an excuse for bad behavior, but that's the truth of your true nature, right? Like you're perfect and whole and complete as you are. Trusting yourself, getting out of the mental formations, getting out of the situation where you're like going to take yourself out, right? It's none of these other external things. It's actually you. So it all comes back to you. And if you knew that you wielded that much power, wouldn't you actually invest in this lifelong commitment to healing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like what is the question really is what is the impact of you not doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So yeah, there's so much power here. There's so much power here. I love this work so much.
Yes, I love that you love it so much because we need that. We really do. We need better leaders. We need more aligned leaders.
Healing leaders, I would posit.
Yeah, healed leaders for sure. So one question that I always ask people on the podcast is, what does thriving look like to you?
Oh, I was just talking about this a little bit with Christine, my partner, and our best friend, Fidishta. And thriving actually is about wealth, but the original version of the word or the original etymology of the word wealth, which was weal, W-E-A-L, which meant well-being. So it was about this holistic understanding of like community and health and all of the parts of ourselves, our relationships, our friendships. That was what wealth was, not personal financial gain. So thriving to me has nothing to do with money. Like, yes, I want to be able to pay for and not be stressed out about paying bills. But even that feels like, okay, that's a detail. Thriving to me is, do I get to wake up every day and do what I love to do for a living? Right? Do I get to have really deep, meaningful, intentional relationships with all of the people in my life. And I really, really do mean all, because at this point, I'm 44 now. At this point, like, if we're not going deep and we're not all in on each other, I don't want the relationship. That goes for my clients, that goes for my friendships. I mean, obviously my partner, like every single person in my sphere. And it's just, I won't even call it a boundary. It's just, that's how I really defined thriving. Because if my world looks like that, what more is there? Right. And the other part of thriving for me is like that it's not just my own individual legacy or needs or all of that. Like those are important, but it's really more about like, what am I contributing while I'm here? So the contribution aspect of that, and doing all of those things in integrity. That, I mean, that's a very long-winded answer, but that's what thriving feels like to me.
I love that. I've asked that question many times and I have never gotten that answer. So I love that answer so much. And I didn't know that thing about wheel and wealth and well-being, and I love
Yeah.
that.
And
So
we were talking about it because it just came up as like an Instagram story the other day. And I was like, did you guys see my story? Because that encapsulation is really what Heal to Lead is about. It's like part of my intrinsic values,
yeah.
all encapsulated into one thing. And I think it took me, I was surprised by it because it was the word wealth. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I have like sticky stuff around the word wealth. But when I understood the etymology of it, it was like, oh, this actually makes a lot of sense.
Mm,
Yeah.
I love that. I think a lot of people are going to find that super cool and
Mm.
love that lesson on that word and the etymology of it. So thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sharing your book and your work and your wisdom. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. This was amazing. But I always love having conversations with you. So thank you.